Yes, you're welcome to carry it around.
Let's see if we make that work. I think it might be easier if I step over here. Okay. So thanks for having me. I am Winston Tripp, and I'm the director of the College of Social Sciences Center for Research at UWG. And I also brought with me Nikki Gage. She's the program coordinator in my center. And so this is actually her hard work you're going to see, and she's the one that's going to answer the tough questions if you guys want to know about the statistics. Basically what we did is at the university about 3 years ago, the Dean of the College of Social Sciences, we recognized that like local community groups and nonprofit organizations don't always have the best data and information, even though it's publicly available. There's so much of it out there that I think that it's really easy for us to get really lost in all the data. And so we just sort of decided to kind of help out by getting data from the Centers for Disease Control and from the Census Bureau and a few other places, just to make sure that there was some reliable data that we could kind of start looking at over time and just sort of helping people to understand their communities. I also think it's important because a lot of us wind up hearing about, the news telling us stories about statistics at the national level or maybe even the Georgia level, and sometimes it's very different at the county level. And so that's what we were kind of interested in. And so then within the center, Nikki and I kind of reconceptualized this as a measure of social well-being indicators. And so what Commissioner Morgan saw at the State of Community presentation was a smaller piece of a report that we started doing for the Carroll County, I just froze up. For a lot of the nonprofits in the area. And so we provided that for them. So if you guys need that or if anybody wants to see more of this, we'd be happy to give you that later. Okay, so just first off the bat, I'm just going to start with a few just basic demographics here. Probably this, I guess, is a little tougher to see than I anticipated, but in the county there's about 116,000 people. This county is about 40% rural, and we go through and compare this to other counties and things like that. And in general, there's about 18% without a high school diploma. So that's the one I want you guys to really key in on, because there's some of that stuff that's going to come up in a second. Okay, so about 20% of the households in Carroll County receive food stamps. And this is the racial composition of Carroll County. Basically, if you are having a hard time seeing this, what we're looking at here is the blue line. This is going to be the percentage of people that are white. This over here on the left is in the overall U.S., and this is in Georgia, right? So we actually match fairly closely the racial composition of the overall U.S., but it is a little bit different than in Georgia in general. Okay, now for the more interesting stuff. So one of the things that always comes up when you talk about communities and social well-being indicators is income, right? So we started out with looking at median income, and we went through, and so what we're going to have here is the dark blue line is Georgia, the light blue line is the United States, and then the gray line is going to be Carroll County, right? And that's going to be consistent throughout the rest of these graphs. Okay, so what you see is that when you hear about statistics at the U.S. level, this is the overall median U.S. income. So that's about $55,000. And so it's trended up slightly, right, over the last 5 years. And this is as of the 2016 census. And so that's 1 year behind where we are now, but that's the most recent data that's available. Then when we took a look at Georgia, Georgia sits just below that, and it trends just about the same, okay, but it comes out at about 51,000 median household income. Then we look at Carroll County. Up until last year, we had been dipping significantly, and we've come back up to about 45,000, 486,000 median household income, right? And this is going to be the story you're going to see, is that Carroll County tends to trend a little bit low, even the Georgia level. Okay, so this is, I thought about that, and I thought, well, what does that mean? Because we've seen changes. We had the recession, and so I went to the Federal Reserve site, and this is their most recent data on unemployment rates. All right, so if you look at this, the gray line here, this is going quite a bit back in time into the 90s, and each gray line is when we've had a recession, right? And I believe that's defined as 2 quarters where we've had economic downturns. And so during this one, our most recent recession, clearly everyone took a huge hit, right? And this is in Carroll County specifically, but the unemployment dropped from a near historic low all the way up to a very huge high at about 10 to 12%, somewhere in that range. And it sat there for a couple of years. And compared to other counties, it took us longer to recover than, say, Coweta County did, right? We were a lot less resilient. It took us several years to come back. But it's been coming back. This is its trend, and since this is up till, like I said, 2016, And we've been slowly trending, getting better and better, and we're now, again, pretty close to that historic low. And so most economists would say that that's hitting about the lowest unemployment that you're going to get. That's defined as the people that are actually looking for a job. Most of them have found it. So in some ways, this is pretty good news. We work with different organizations in the community, like the Reentry Coalition and things like that, to help people that are kind of on the margins of society work to get jobs. And for them, this means it's going to be a little bit easier to help the people when they first get in to find initially a job. But then we thought, well, does that mean, overall health of the economy? Is that the full story? Because what about just having a job? Is that enough? And so then we looked at some of the statistics on percentage of the population below poverty. Okay, so again, you're seeing here that the light blue line, this is the overall U.S., and that's the percentage of people in poverty at about 15%. And then, of course, you've got the Georgia line, and then here we have the Carroll County line. And so we have come back some, but we're still at about 19% of the county overall that's in poverty. And this, again, that's definitely higher than either of these other two statistics. And so that's a very different picture than you would see if you were just looking at the national numbers. And then when we thought, okay, just before I show this next graph, let me just say, the way the Census Bureau does this is they get really, really solid data at the federal level and at the state level, and then it's very costly to go and do local surveys, and so they go around to all the counties, and some of the counties you have sparser data than in others. And especially when you go down to the next level, it can get really sparse, and so it gets harder to get good estimates, and so I'm going to qualify a few statements I'll say with that. But the way they break that down is into census tracts, and so if you're not familiar with census tracts, they're not necessarily the most meaningful things. They're just kind of arbitrary lines that the Census Bureau draws in the county, and it's based on sometimes geography and communities, but sometimes just on the density of the population. So it sort of will map onto communities, but not always, I guess is my point. Okay, but we dug in a little deeper to just see if we could get any more close to the ground kind of data for us here. And so this is what you see in Carroll County. Now what we have here is again, we mapped out the percentage of the population below the poverty line. And the darkest line, or the darkest colors, is going to represent the most people in poverty. And then the lightest blue color is going to be the lowest percentage of people in poverty. And so we said it was about 19%, right? So that's about the middle of the range here. That's the overall average. But it's definitely very different across the county. Okay, now this is where I said that at this level, when we get this close to the ground, there is some sampling error so that there's a range. So maybe I can't tell you exactly the precise number, of course, but this gives you a sense of kind of where the poverty is located. Okay, so if this is Carrollton right here, there's actually two census tracts right in here. It's kind of hard to tell that because it's the same color, but this is definitely where poverty is the most highly clustered right in here. And that's considerably higher than everywhere else, right? Then over here you have Villa Rica is doing just about the best. This is the best census tract in this area. Okay, so then I'll move on here. And so a lot of the things that are related to this, they don't happen in a vacuum. And so that's one of the reasons why people can get overwhelmed with statistics. If you look at the census site or the CDC site and you just see all these numbers about people. But as a sociologist, when I look at this, I think about how these things are related, because when you wind up with people who are in poverty, those are also usually the people who also have a low level of education, who also have health problems. All kinds of factors always kind of congregate together. And so one of those tends to also be education. So we looked at the percentage of the population 25 or younger without a high school diploma or equivalent, or GED. And 25 is the age they use, just because by then, if you haven't gotten it, you probably aren't going to get it. So we looked at this, and again we see that the same story, very similar story here, not just a small jump, but a much higher percentage of the population in the county that does not have a high school diploma or a GED. And it is trending down slightly, but that's not a whole huge change just in this last year. And so then we took a look. Okay, so what we did next is I said, if I backed up, and I said, what happens if we look at just one of the worst off census tracts, right? And again, take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because there is sampling error involved. But if we pulled that one out and just said, let's look at one of these statistics and see how different the story is for them, then we wind up with this. So this is the percentage of the population without a GED or high school diploma again. But what we did is we pulled out that one census tract right in the middle of town right here, and there's a number to it if you really care and you want to look up the census site. And I think we figured this roughly maps onto I think the District 1-ish, I think, somewhere in there, I believe. Okay. And so you see the story here. This is considerably higher and has jumped up. And so this has jumped up a significant step here up to, quite high levels. And again, I don't want to look too much at the specific percentage because there's a pretty big range of sampling error at that small of a level. But the short story here is that it's much more than the rest of the county, the state, and definitely the U.S. So it's considerably worse off. Okay, and then so this is overall, we're trying to think of all the different factors that are related to community well-being, and so I'm just giving you a snapshot here. So this is obesity rates. This is from the Centers for Disease Control. They are particularly, have some very well-developed measures of health and all those things, of course, but they don't do a lot of sampling at the smallest level. So really we can only look for these guys at the overall state. And when we talked about obesity rates, it's easy to look at the change over time and see the story very quickly, right? Just since the 2000s, we've jumped from roughly 24-ish% up to 31%. If I went further back in time into the 90s, they didn't measure it as well, but we've about doubled in that time. If you put it in context of the rest of the US, that's when, in some ways, we don't look too bad. We're actually in the middle of the pack, which is a terrible thing to say because it's a pretty awful story. But there are states that are definitely far worse than us. But then when you look at that, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that, yes, but the obesity rate's up near 30%, and we've about doubled in the last 20 years. We just doing a few other things that we'd just like to report in general. So this is the percentage of uninsured adults. Okay, the trend is to go down. Carroll County is looking better than the overall state average, actually. Like we're about on par at this point. And I think that was the last slide there. So we have more stuff available and would be happy to share that out with anybody who's interested and anything like that. But at this point, I'm happy to take any questions y'all might have.
Any questions from the board? Or anyone for that fact?
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. We do appreciate that.
I think
Pete, absolutely.
I'm the GIS manager for the county.
Okay.
So that census data and everything, I would love to get that so we can integrate it with our system.
Oh, I can definitely show you that. No problem.
Absolutely. That helps us compile. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Move to item number 2 is a presentation. We'll call on Commissioner Lee.
Yes, this is the National Joint Powers of Alliance contract for government agencies. And Mr. McMahon, I've known him for 15, 16 years, I actually worked with him, and this is a presentation that I think that might be good for us to look at. And I'll turn it over to you, Gil. Come up.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Two gentlemen to my left here, Justin Olson and Grayson Briggs, are with the Gordian Group, and they are actually responsible for the NJPA contract. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Briggs, and he can give you a rundown on everything about it.
Thanks, Gil. Good afternoon. My name's, again, Grayson Briggs. I'm with a company called Gordian. We are the contract administrators for a construction convenience contract that is available through NJPA and has been adopted by the state of Georgia as a Georgia statewide contract that's available through the Department of Administrative Services. And these are job order contracts, which is an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. Essentially, the way these contracts are bid and awarded is that a unit price book of construction tasks is developed. It covers all construction trades from asphalt and concrete to drywall, HVAC, roofing systems, interior, exterior. And it's essentially a unit price for the cost for a contractor to install a square foot of drywall, a linear foot of underground pipe, roofing system, again, anything across construction trades. And contractors bid a markup or markdown on those fixed prices, which establishes pricing through these contracts. And then contractors are awarded based on low bid. And so within Georgia, there are currently a number of general contractors who have been awarded and are available to you as a county to use on any upcoming construction work that you might have. This is a contract that's been in place with the state of Georgia since 2010. Back in 2010, we saw about $20 million go through the contract. Within the last few years, we've seen about $300 million go through these contracts. So it's a fairly regularly used construction procurement method. It's something that has been in place federally since the 80s, and again, locally here in Georgia since 2010. It's a performance-based contract, which means when contractors bid and are awarded, they don't know who they're going to work for, what they're going to do in terms of project scope. And so that pricing, again, is fixed across all trades, and the only thing that becomes variable in the project is your scope of work. So if you had a project, just say to renovate interiors, the interior of this room, just say flooring, essentially a contractor could come out, take the square footage and provide you with options, replacement in carpet tile, wood flooring, VCT tile, whatever it might be, provide you options through the state contract pricing, and then allow you to issue a purchase order from that price proposal. It is a unit price line item proposal. Once companies such as Brown and Root or develops a price proposal, it's reviewed by Gordian, essentially because there are procurement guidelines that are dictated by the state, technical specifications that say what contractors can and cannot charge you for. An easy example would be asphalt shingles. The cost to get them onto the roof is included up to 1.5 stories. After 2 stories, you might see a crane or scaffolding in a proposal so the contractor can get those materials on the roof. Under 2 stories, they would not be allowed to charge you for that. So this process, job order contracts in general, the goal is to save time and money on construction procurement. The typical time frame to turn around a price proposal through this contract is 2 weeks. That price proposal process is not at no upfront risk, cost, or obligation to you to get a proposal developed. And we see jobs come through this contract anywhere from about $10,000 up to $7 or $8 million. Some of the larger users in the state would be the National Guard, Department of Corrections, Department of Transportation, Department of Natural Resources. On a county level, we work with folks around the state, Henry County, Sumter County, a bunch of school boards, Clayton County schools, Savannah, Chatham County schools, Gordon County schools, as well as quite a few cities across the state. So I'd be happy to provide more information or references if you so choose. But essentially, this is a contracting option. It's been bid and awarded, and it's available to you to get pricing on any of your upcoming projects through. It certainly is by no means the only way to procure construction. In fact, we would say if you were going to build a new courthouse, that you would probably still have that designed and bid and put out on the street. But renovation and repair, minor new construction, even site work projects have been accomplished through the contracts.
Very good. So it's done on a per project basis.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The only vendor you contract with is the general contractor, and it's on a per project basis.
Any questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item 3, is Kiwanis Club. We'll call on Commissioner Powers for an introduction.
Randy, thank you for coming today, and thank y'all for what y'all are willing to do. I know y'all do a lot. Randy is the main one, probably cooks over at the Ag Center, and he takes care of the kitchen, and he called and asked could he bring a proposal to the board tonight, and I said absolutely. I put you on the agenda so thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm Randy Coggins with the Carrollton Golden Cake Kiwanis. We're the old folks that make all the pancakes. This past February, we fed a little bit over 2,000 people at the Ag Center. We get an awful lot of real positive feedback on the facility there. When we have a cow show over there, we get an awful lot of positive feedback from people all over the southeast that come to the cow show. We got a gold mine over there. We need to keep it going. This year, we only had one failure with the stove, so we were real lucky. It's time to replace it. That stove was put in there about 14 years ago, and it was bought used. It's been a good one. It's given its life. It's time for a new stove. A new stove to replace what's there with exactly just put back what's there, brand new. It's going to be about $3,000. Carrollton Golden K wants to give y'all $2,000 to go toward that. The Ag Center needs a convection oven in the worst sort of a way. To buy that same stove with convection ovens, if you'll buckle your seat belts, it's $12,000. That's a special item, and it's not standard throughout the industry. The standard throughout the industry is a freestanding convection oven. And I talked to Orlando over at Restaurant Supply. He just sold a good used one for $1,600. So they're out there, they're available, they're very affordable. And if it's possible, when it comes time to spend some of that money on the kitchen, that dishwasher that's in there, it was bought used 14 years ago when we did the kitchen. To replace that, somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 with a new one. Under $7,500, and we'll give you $2,000 of that. We'll put that kitchen brand new, in good shape, ready to go. That's a certified kitchen. You can rent the facility, go in there and produce a food product and sell it. Like I say, we've got a gold mine over there, and we want to do what we can do to keep it there. There's just too much positive feedback from the community. People that come to the pancake breakfast don't come to too many cow shows, but they like what they see over there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Randy, we appreciate what y'all do. You've helped us in that kitchen for a while now, from the hot water to several things we've done. We appreciate that.
And
absolutely.
We appreciate all that's been done there. I hope that with all these improvements that are going to be done, we can put a small electric water heater in the bathroom so we can separate those two systems. We can raise the temperature on that tankless water heater in the kitchen a little bit too.
So what you're saying, you need about $7,500 to finish the kitchen out?
About $7,500 to put that kitchen back in really, really good shape.
Is this not something we can include in the renovations we're doing now?
I'm sure we'll get Randy to make the list, show them the design while we're over there, because you know the renovations we're already including gonna
Right.
do. And let's see what kind of funding we've got now available. I
Yeah.
think that'd be fair to look at, absolutely. We'll make a list and see where we stand. Be glad that, but we sure do appreciate the partnership. That's a lot of-
Absolutely, it's our
And it's
pleasure.
year round. I know you don't just cook for them. I've caught you over there many hours. So,
Good food,
yeah,
too.
absolutely. I always look forward to it, but yeah, we appreciate everything you do over there.
Well, thank you very much. It's a
Before we go
pleasure.
any further, I don't know how to word this. Okay, so I'm not sure we have much left, because you remember we were doing the roof, the bathrooms, and while he's not asking for much, I just want to make sure, can we bring this back up in maybe a month or two?
Absolutely.
And
When
y'all
we
will
say where
remember
we-
Randy's presentation if we need more kitchen, because, I mean,
We'll record it, and if we don't have the funds under what we're currently doing, I don't mind bringing it back. absolutely.
This can be done under splice, right?
Absolutely, so,
Right, but you know, we put the 300,000, but we're doing the roof for sure now, and then we're doing the bathroom, so I wanna make sure we do have enough, or that we
just
might
need
bring this back.
Or do we just need to add it and go on and put it in there?
I think we find out where we are on the other money. If it needs to be there, we'll bring it back. I promise you, I don't have a problem bringing it back.
But how soon do you need the oven? See, that's the problem. What,
Well, we'll do whatever we need to do to work with you on the refurbishing project. It may take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 weeks to order that new stove and get it in over at Restaurant Supply. That's not a problem. You know, as long as
I
we,
just wanna make sure, cause if is it broken right this moment, or it's repaired, but you think it's really on its last?
it's hanging in
It
there.
could go
Because
out.
we have other that's what I'm saying, we have other people who have rented the facility, so I don't know if we need to make a motion to spend up to 7,500 if we need it in the next 3 months. I just don't want all of a sudden the oven's broken and we don't have an oven.
Right. You said it's still working, we're just gonna need one.
It is, and keep it in your thoughts and prayers.
That's what I'm worried about, yeah.
When when you open the door, the springs are broken. It's also a safety hazard too, you told.
There is one door that the spring broke the other day at the cow show. We were able to patch it back together. Because it's an old spring, there's not any adjustment left in it. Yeah, if you're not careful with what you're doing, you'll drop the oven door. We ask people to be really careful in there with it.
So I
We
guess
don't
my
wanna-
question is, do we order it now? That's really what we're
If it
asking.
takes, how many
Is it-
weeks? is it?
Well, I think we just need to see where the money is. They just total
That's
it up.
why I think we'll get with Gerald. We'll do that next week, include you. Y'all look, see where we are. Let's stop the leaks and then work down. And
Excellent.
yeah, and if there's a timeline issue, we'll bring it back immediately.
Do you have a
Excellent.
price list that someone's quoted this equipment that you could submit to Gerald that has
Well,
each
according
item?
to Orlando over at Restaurant Supply, I've got,
That's what we need right there. We can work off that along with you.
that'll give you the price on the stove. The stove is the big thing. The
Okay.
freestanding convection oven, all we gotta do is let him know we want one, to keep an eye out for a good deal
Okay?
on one.
And then he'll find one.
The dishwasher, when you're ready for that, order it, and when he gets it in, he'll put it in.
I just don't want it to be broken and someone who has rented this facility all of a sudden is,
Yeah.
put it. So,
I'm sure that once folks understand that we're working toward getting it all back in shape, they'll understand, they'll work with us. And also, while I'm here, if I may, please mark your calendar, March the 8th, Thursday morning, between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. If you get a chance, come by the Ag Center and have breakfast with us. We're doing a breakfast for all of our public safety people. And in Carroll County, our public safety people have an awful lot of support, and it's important that we show that.
Absolutely.
Folks, thank you all very much for your
Thank you,
time.
thank you.
Randy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
My
Randy.
Item 4 is review and discussion of items for the March 6th Board of Commissioners meeting. You go down and start with item number 8 under the financial session. We'll do the financial recap that evening. Item 8.2 will be the additional funds for the purchase of real estate to the economic, to the Development Authority for Economic Development.
okay, is that a second 500 for a total of $1 million?
Yes.
Or is that the 500 we just voted on?
That's the additional 500 that we agreed to.
So they're already coming back that fast?
That's
What we
I'm saying.
discussed at the work session to approve. We gave them the first 500,000.
Right.
With the agreement to give them the other half.
Yeah.
What have they
That
spent
we-
on?
And this is what this is for. That other half we agreed to give.
Okay. That they
Correct, Lehman?
need. Yeah,
Yeah.
we, huh? And we would look at
The additional 5.
But what did they do
additional.
with the first 500?
Have they
initial-
used the first five?
The original 5 was to replace the 600 and something that they spent up there in Temple. This is the additional 5 that we agreed to on that Saturday, yes.
Okay, Well, I don't remember agreeing to it. I remember that when they needed it, and they were gonna come and tell us what they were gonna do with it. But I'm just one.
Yeah. Well, we agreed, Lehman brought it to our attention at the work session. We had a consensus that that's where we were gonna go. Be glad to vote on it Tuesday night. We'll move into item number 9 of the business session. We're gonna call on Stacy Blackman for a resolution for, 8.3. Don't miss the good judge. We'll call on Miss Betty Cason, probate judge.
She's back.
I think it's her birthday.
How did you know that? Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you. I've probably spoken numerous times about our mental health crisis that we have here in the county, and seeing the presentation from the Center of Research. I know Michelle was there, and I'm not sure who else, but we had, week before last, a state of the community at the college where mental health issues were discussed, and it's in crisis mode. And so I'm here tonight to ask for your support for 2 things. One, we are applying for a grant to help us with pretrial diversion, education, and treatment for people in Carroll County that have mental illness and co-occurring disorders, which is substance abuse. And what this grant will do will give us money to help get these people treatment. It will help pay for some administrative costs, and it will also help us employ some people to work not only with my office, but the solicitor's office, and also with municipalities in the county with their law enforcement. And hopefully, I know the city of Carrollton is on board pretty much with getting their pretrial diversion through their municipal court, and we're going to contact the other courts in the city, in the county, to see if they would like to join in. And hopefully this will alleviate some of Sheriff Langley's problems in his jail. Before I came over today, we were just, and let me introduce Jody. She doesn't like to be recognized, but Jody, stand. This is Jody Goodman. We got a $22,000 grant from the Community Foundation this year to hire a coordinator. Of course, that only gives us like 24 hours a week at that salary. So Jody has worked so diligently volunteering her time until we get her position approved on this grant. And when we were looking at some statistics, this was in 2015. The Sheriff's Department transported, this was just 1013s, and that's to explain the difference. When a doctor sends somebody for an involuntary commitment, it's called a 1013. That's the form they use. When I send somebody for an involuntary commitment, it's called an order to apprehend. In 2015, the Sheriff's Department transported 957 people just on 1013s. Since the 21st of February through this morning, I have done 6 orders to apprehend on people that were a threat to themselves or to others. One of them came to the courthouse this morning and greeted the deputies as they came in. So the sad thing is that, all I can do is send people for evaluations right now. The state has just
Zilch.
abandoned, and we have one of the most broken systems that there is, and that was the consensus from the collaboration we had a couple of weeks ago at the college. The state of Georgia's system is so broken. So anyway, with your permission, would like to apply for the grant. And also, Jody, through the through the West Georgia Foundation, Community Foundation, I have asked for a position to be added to my department so that we can pay Jody, and then the
grant will reimburse the county. It'll be no expense to the county, no funds, unless the county wants to give us some money. And I appreciate the $1,000 that you give us now, and the fact that you give us facilities and those kind of things. And Jody and I were trying to come up with how much of my time is spent on mental illness and working with people and families, and probably a third of my time or better is spent helping people. And you know, that's not just the commitment orders, that's working with the magistrate court, you know, on bond hearings to get people a condition of their bond that they have to go to a treatment facilities. You know, that's working with families who are so devastated about their loved ones. And it's sad. And if you haven't dealt with it yet, you will, because the national average is 1 in 4 people suffer with some kind of mental illness. You may not be directly, but indirectly, or a family member. And it's disheartening to try to get help. And I had a lady this morning that we met with, and she said, all I want is help. And, you know, sometimes my hands are tied. I can't do anything. So we would ask for your approval to submit the grant, and I would also ask for your approval to add Jody's position under my court so that we can pay her, and then she'll be reimbursed for the grant.
And Judge, this would be tied with our budget process starting and everything. What timeline is this?
I'm sorry?
Would this run on our timeline for the renewal of our budget to start in July? What's the time frame for the grant and the position?
It started, well, actually, the grant funds were available to us in November,
Okay.
but we had to go through the interviewing process. And for y'all, for those that don't know, Jody, she worked with the City of Carrollton Housing Authority, and we kind of stowed her away. So she is an awesome, she was chairman of the Meth Coalition here in the county. She's worked with children. She's done an enormous job with everything she does. And Michelle, I think, has worked with her and can vouch for that. She's been on our Carroll County Mental Health Advocacy Board for almost since inception. So I don't know what we did to deserve her, but I just thank the good Lord every day. So y'all have any other questions?
Any questions?
Nope.
So this is for the grant, which pays for her position.
Well, it will, we already have $22,000 to start paying her position, and that's for 24 hours a week. And this grant would just make her full-time, plus it would give us some other employees to help with administering the program.
Okay.
How
But
long is that grant for?
This grant, it's 3 years, 5 years.
okay. So
Yeah, it's $300,000, up to $300,000. We can make great strides with that.
Good start
It is a good start.
Yeah,
at the local level, as we
Yeah.
well know. We do, but we do appreciate what you do. We had many conversations about it.
yeah,
I thank you for doing our part.
okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Judge Cason, thank you very much. Next item, go into the business session. Item number 9 is 9.1. We'll call on Stacy Blackman, County Attorney, for a resolution to abandon Old Olds Road.
Thank you. Last month, you all approved considering abandoning the .16 acre tract on Old Folds Road that was relocated. And we've sent out the notices to the neighbors and published the ad in the paper. And so next week's meeting will be the public hearing for public comment. I haven't received anything so far. And then you can consider abandoning it and then authorize the chairman to transfer the property. Any questions?
Any questions on the abandonment?
Thank you.
Seeing none. That's it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zonings. I think y'all been aware that 2 have come off so far. So we've got 5 zonings we will not discuss. Anything else from the board?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second?
Second. All those in favor? Stand adjourned. Thank you.